the first webinar community speakers program for COTA New South Wales. My name's Ross Hughes. I'll be the MC, whatever you want to call me, for today. You won't hear a lot from me. I'll be a bit in the background as well. The Community Speakers Program is a 2020 initiative for COTA New South Wales. And it started off at the beginning of the year with lofty aims, but then COVID hit. Hello. So it was suspended things for a lot, because the original idea was that the community speakers would be available to go out to people within the community to do face-to-face meetings. Well, that went by the by, as you understand. So it's taken a while to convert the materials and get the technology together to actually start a webinar program. This is the first that COTA New South Wales is doing, but I think you'll find it useful. And the good thing about it is we're able to talk directly to people all over New South Wales. So that's a terrific initiative, and COTA New South Wales needs to be congratulated for doing that. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting as a webinar today. The panelists and myself, we're on Gadigal and Darug land, but all of you, of course, are all around the state, so you'll be on very different traditional owners' land. But I'd like to pay my respects to elders, both past and present, in all of those different lands. And I'd also like to acknowledge any First Nations who are on the webinar people today. Welcome. COTA. COTA, if you aren't aware what the acronym stands for, it stands for Council on the Ageing. And we're the peak organisation for people over 50 in New South Wales. We're a policy and advocacy organisation. We work with politicians, policy makers, service providers, and the media to make sure the views of older people are heard and acted upon. We also provide services for older people, including the Legal Pathways Program, the Aged Care Navigator Service, Strength for Life, and this Community Speakers Program. You can find more information about all of those programs on the COTA New South Wales website. Bit of Zoom housekeeping now to make things work well for today. As I explained to people who were on just before 10:30, the system puts you all on mute, and you will only be able to see the panelists, and it seems only while they are speaking. There is a Q&A function. If you move your cursor down to the bottom of the screen or into the edge of the screen, you'll see a little two cartoon dialogue boxes, which says Q&A. You can ask questions in there. You can direct them to either of the presenters or just generally. And I'll be monitoring those, and we'll have a Q&A session at the end so that we'll try and answer as many of those questions as we can and we have time for. There's a chat function, which I'm glad to see some people have found how to use as well. That's not necessarily for questions, although it can be used for questions. It's more for comments and things. I would ask you to be respectful. This is the first time we tried this, so we value your feedback, and there will be a survey come out after the webinar to make sure to get some ideas about how they might be improved, what you found useful, and so on. A couple of other things. I'll remind you that the email that you got to invite you to the Zoom meeting, to the webinar, had a couple of links to really useful brochures at the end, which you can click on, and really so much information that will be presented in the webinar today will be available through those brochures. You can click on the link and download them. There's also the whole session is being recorded, the whole webinar is being recorded, and you'll receive a link to see that if you miss anything. So my suggestion is don't feel like you've got to make a huge amount of notes, just write down particular things if you need to, because the webinar, the whole PowerPoint presentation will be sent to you later, and you've got access to those brochures as well. If you're having trouble with anything, and it's good that people are using the chat section, write something there if you need to, you're finding it hard to hear or something. Write something there and we'll see what we can do. That you're already connected means you've got past the most important step, I would suggest. All right, I think that's probably enough from me. I'm going to introduce the speakers, and because I'm pattering on, you're only seeing me, but when I introduce the individual speakers, I'll ask them to talk so that people see you. Both of the speakers today are experts on the energy issue, and we've already had a run through of this presentation, and I sure learned a few things too. So I'd like to introduce Jennifer Farrer first of all.
Good morning. Thank you very much for the welcome. I'm looking forward to giving you some information that might help you to reduce your bill and also to live more comfortably.
And Pete Newman.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you find the information that we give you helpful. Using energy is important, as we've suffered through a very hot weekend, and I understand many parts of New South Wales are about to have the same experience today. So it certainly seems that what we have to tell you is probably quite germane at the moment.
All right, I'm going to turn it over to the presentation now.
We'll just wait for some slides to come up and then kick off. Yeah, thank you, Ross. As I was saying, we will today be aware that we'll need to use a fair bit of energy to keep ourselves comfortable. We live in homes that in many cases can be too hot or too cold, and that causes problems on humid days with mold and damp, which can cause respiratory and allergy issues. So rationing energy is probably something that can be prejudicial to your health. I have an architect friend who tells me that keeping Australian homes comfortable is a difficult thing. And he says, in comparison to many places in colder climates like Europe, the average brick veneer house, which is common in Australia, is a bit like camping out by comparison. So we do need to use energy to keep our homes comfortable and to make sure that our health is good. Some data I've seen suggests that the death rate due to cold weather in Australia was almost double that of Sweden during a 27-year study, and I think that a lot of that can be put down to the nature of the building quality that we have. Some of you may have seen some of the overseas real estate programs and escape to the country, that sort of thing, and you find that the homes in those areas are much better insulated than here. Rising energy costs have been a phenomenon that I suspect many people have experienced over recent years. I don't believe this is because people have used energy inappropriately. I think it's largely because of changes in the market. Many of you will remember when before the 1990s, when much of the energy industry was deregulated, that energy was supplied in the various states by monopolies such as the county council. So those structural changes and some of the increase in population have put pressures on the grid, which have led to some changes in energy prices. These challenges are not just unique to the older community. I believe that there are people who are concerned about energy bills right across the community. And a couple of messages that I think it's important to be aware of today, that if you are worried about your energy and about your energy use and your energy costs, there are steps that you can take, and there is help that is available to you if you are stressed by it. And there are many simple actions that you can do to take control of your energy use and your energy bill around your home. Can we move to the next slide, please, Ross?
Now, the next slide is something that we're going to do a couple of times during this presentation today. We're actually going to ask you for some feedback about things that you can tell us about yourselves. So we've already mentioned that there's been a lot of public discussion about energy bills, the costs over the last few years, and it's very important to emphasise that this is mostly due to factors beyond our control. So we're going to ask you, have you, just to click yes or no to the first question, have you noticed an increase in your energy bills over the past 5 years? Because a lot of people have. And have you or someone you know struggled to pay an energy bill over the last 5 years? COTA's research shows that a large number of older people, I think it's 50%, no, 12% struggle to pay their bills. And overdue energy bills were one of the things that gave them the most trouble in trying to make ends meet. So if you could just vote yes or no to those, and we'll get those results in. It'll be interesting to see the experience of the people who are here today for the webinar. And later on, we'll have some other polls as well. So this is amazing. 96% of people have noticed an increase in their energy bills over the past 5 years. That's certainly, I'm one of those. Not so much in the last couple of years, because I've been trying to do something about keeping my energy costs down. But about 5 years ago, I couldn't believe how much my power bills were going up. And about half of the people who are here today have struggled to pay an energy bill. They have had bill shock, as we call it, over the last 5 years, either themselves or somebody close to them. So it's really good to know that the people who are watching today, this is going to be a webinar that hopefully will help you solve some problems. So the problem we're trying to solve is as I mentioned, over half of Australians are having trouble with their energy bills, and 12%. That's a really large number. That's more than 1 in 10 householders struggling to pay their bills. And 73% felt that affordability of services such as energy, internet or phone would make a fair bit or even a great deal of difference to them personally. So we are going to talk to you about the importance of actions that you can take to maybe reduce bill shock. It's actions that you can take with your energy provider, and also some day-to-day behaviours that you can do.
Fine. For many Australians, the competitive energy market is a new experience, and many are missing out on the benefits that a competitive market can offer. Obviously, there are a massive of suppliers of energy in this country, and there are various offers about. Many people find the energy market a confusing space to negotiate. And obviously, in some cases, there are many people who are limited in the scope and opportunity that they have to make changes that will improve their energy use. Those persons who live in rented homes or in retirement villages or in nursing homes may well be limited in the ability to make changes to their home in respect of insulation or furnishings or appliances, so that they can affect greater economy in their energy use. Many others will have financial circumstances that will limit their capacity to purchase new equipment or to make changes in their life and home, which will enable them to take advantage of changes in the energy market. I suspect that many older Australians have not challenged the market or looked into taking the opportunity to explore whether or not there are better opportunities for energy economy across the market. And one of the things that we aim to do this morning is to give people some ideas about how they go about doing that and some confidence in going forward with a process of improving their energy situation. We have another slide, please, Ross. Yeah, financial and health benefits. I've spoken about health. An interesting survey, and I will ask one of my helpers to put into the chat section the website Energy Consumers Australia, which is a body which represents those consumers of energy in Australia. Partnered with Macquarie University in research to examine the relationships between energy use and welfare in the broader community. What was found was that there is a bivariate relationship between energy use and health and welfare on a number of measures. There were also differences that were experienced as a result of the regions in which people live and also their hereditary background. Clearly, I think people who live in regional and remote areas are not always as well served as other folk, and the difficulties for persons from a non-English speaking background will be more difficult. So these things don't help people to shop around. Older customers tend to be fairly loyal supporters of the companies that they deal with, which generally today doesn't seem to work as well. I believe that we found that a number of industries, banks and telcos, energy suppliers tend not to reward their long-term customers, and many people have found that they get a better mortgage rate or a better telco deal, and I'm of the view that you can get a better energy deal by ringing your supplier and simply asking for one, and you can in most cases get a better deal by shopping around and looking at the options that are out there. There are a number of concessions that are available and rebates that that folk should be made aware of, and we'll try and get to those a little later on. But I think it's important to take some steps in this area. Many of us, for a variety of reasons, have not been used to complaining about the services that we receive or haggling about prices or bargaining with people, and I think clearly we now need to recognise that this is not in anybody's interests. What we don't want is people rationing to an unsafe level. It's important that they get help. Since the advent of the smart meters, we've been able to get a lot more information about how people use energy, and there is a group of older customers who are among the very lowest users of energy seen anywhere in the country. And what's interesting about this group of people is that once every couple of months they have quite significant spikes in their usage on a given day, which is sadly frequently the day when their family come to visit. So they tend to put on the heaters and cooling on those occasions, but ration their use at other times.
So we're going to do another poll now. We're going to ask you about what you think are the items in your house that use the most energy, what you think takes up the most energy in your house. We're also going to ask you, are you aware that energy companies do provide offers for seniors or older people? We hope some of you will say yes, because then we'll have some people to talk to about what you can do. And do you know anyone who rations energy use to save on energy costs? And energy, we're not meaning air conditioning or fans in summer, we're meaning other energy use. So if you would like to answer those questions now, maybe some of you have approached your energy companies and asked for a better deal or gone to a website to look for it, but we'd like to know that. We're going to be talking about these things very soon. We'd like to know who amongst the audience has had that experience, and also if you know people who are rationing their energy use. And be interesting to know what what you think uses the most electricity in your home. Could be quite interesting. We're going to tell you what the real figures are in a minute. Have we got the results of that coming in yet? No, we haven't. Here we go. Almost half of people are aware and almost half of people not aware. And more than half, 2/3 of people do know people who ration energy. Now, 46% of people have nominated appliances equipment as being the highest users of energy in the house. You don't think that that lighting uses very much. That's interesting because we go around switching off the lights, don't we? I think I've been doing that all my life. Water heating, 23%, and heating and cooling, 31%. We'll go to the next slide and look at those figures. And it's very interesting. The audience is pretty well spot on with how the actual figures are. Can we show the next slide, please? There we are. This, of course, is an average, and it depends very much on the number of people in your household and also where you live. If you live in a very hot place or a very cold place, your heating and cooling could be higher. Water heating is very much influenced by the number of people in the house. So our participants in the webinar today are quite well informed. We had, well, 0% for lighting. Of course, that's not right because lights do take some power. So a very small amount for lighting, 6%. 40% heating and cooling. I think the estimate from the participants today was 46%. So it's not quite as high as that, certainly on average anyway. You're pretty spot on with appliances and equipment being 33%. And hot water also. So you've got an idea that the heating and cooling really is what's chewing through your electricity, and the appliances and equipment that you've got in your house are the other big users. So these are the two areas that we should be looking at if we're wanting to make savings in our individual use of electricity. So we're going to go on now and talk first of all about how we choose energy, and I'll hand it back to Pete.
Thank you, Jennifer. Yeah, it's interesting to take note of that. My good lady wife tells me always to not turn off the lights, and that the saving of 6% of energy is not worthwhile falling down the stairs here. So again, I think that safety and health are the reasons behind these choices. Okay, let's have a look at some things that are able to be done for us to improve the situation of energy economy in the house. We can obviously look for a better energy deal, and that means going to town and talking a little with your suppliers and potential suppliers in the market, and we'll come and talk a little bit about that. I won't talk too much today about alternative energy sources. Some of you will have solar panels, and a few of you may have the reserve batteries that feed off those systems. There are some issues about that, but I think we'll probably take that up in a subsequent webinar. There is the opportunity, of course, to improve your building fabric and the nature of your appliances to economise on energy. But again, as we pointed out, that's not always available to everybody, certainly not to people in the rental market or in some of the aged accommodation. We can choose some more efficient equipment, and we'll talk to you about how that should be done. And we'll choose to change the ways in which we use energy, and particularly the time of day when we use energy. Energy is frequently billed for us in a way that varies across the day. So just moving on, we'll talk about how you might go about choosing a better energy deal. If you approach your energy company to make sure that you're on the best deal, it's been estimated that persons can save quite considerable amounts of money in doing so. Before you call the energy company, do a little research, have a look at your bills and check how much energy used during the last quarter. Check the daily kilowatt hour figure. Kilowatt hour is a measure of energy used over time. I won't talk about gas today, but that's gigajoules, which is a unit of energy achieved by the burning of gas. And also check what prices those products are charged at. It's also, in some cases, you will have the opportunity to see how the bill compares over time, particularly over last year. This is going to be an interesting year. We've come out of a winter where many of us have had to spend much more time in our homes, and we've had to organise things like shopping from home and using computer technology to communicate, shop, keep in touch with family. So clearly energy use is likely to have increased as a result of COVID. So we need to do this research. In order to do that, we need to probably have a little look at energy bills. What I've done here is I've actually printed out the tariff sections of my most recent energy bill. The front page will tell you in very large print how much you owe and when they expect it to be paid. And my view is that that's probably all that many people understand of their energy bill. But I encourage you to have a look at the ways in which your energy bill is worked out. And looking at this energy bill, you can find some interesting things there. As I said, power is charged at a different rate throughout the day, and this particular company, which is AGL, refer to these different rates as peak rates, off-peak rates, shoulder rates, and controlled load 1. You can see those listed down there together. And there is a supply charge as well, which is the fixed cost of being connected to the grid. It's interesting that takes a fairly significant proportion of the bill. I think the final payment I made there was, I don't know, $250, and there's $85, $86 there for the fixed charge. Looking at that bill, I'll give you some information about the peak, but what you need to be aware of is that the particular hours of peak time, off-peak time and shoulder time will vary from company to company and from region to region, probably only slightly, but they do vary a little. Unfortunately, this information isn't always disclosed on your bill. When I had to find out mine, I had to go back to the contract that I signed on my energy use at the time. Just to give you an idea of the times and the rates, you can see that the peak charge there is at not quite 54 cents per kilowatt hour. And that is the peak period, which runs from 2 to 8 p.m. Monday to Friday. And clearly energy use at that time is charged at a much more significant rate than what you see at other times. The off-peak rate, which is from 10 p.m. till 7 a.m., is charged at a little less than 15 cents per kilowatt hour. And the shoulder period, which is from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Monday to Friday and at weekends, is charged at 22 cents per kilowatt hour. So clearly, if you've got the opportunity to run some of your heavy duty appliances, dishwashers, washing machines, and if you can run those through the day or overnight, then clearly there are some significant savings that are available to you. The other thing that I would suggest to you is that you would like to have a look at your energy use over time. And I know that some bills compare typical customers of varying house sizes to give you an idea of whether your energy use is greater or lesser than the community. There are a variety of discounts available, and you see that at the bottom. There's a credit card payment fee that's been lodged there, and you can see that I've got some credits for various discounts that are available. There's a feed-in tariff for a solar panel installation that we've got here, and again the feed-in tariff is around about 10 cents per kilowatt hour, so that's actually around about only 2/3 of the off-peak price. So I won't discuss solar panels today, but my view is that you probably shouldn't make that investment decision based on access to feed-in tariffs.
Before we go on to the next slide, there's a question, controlled load 1 and 2, what's the difference? You've only got controlled load.
Yeah, controlled load refers to charges, and it's often a lower charge on three-phase power and a special appliance or special energy use requirements. Typically, that will be things like swimming pool heating, swimming pool chlorination. That will be things like underfloor heating. In some cases, it may be air conditioning where three-phase power is used. So there is the energy suppliers will have some control over when those sorts of appliances or those sorts of services operate, and so there's a discount rate available for those. Many people won't find that, and again, that will be called different things on different bills and be charged at somewhat different rates. So, okay. Right, let's go and talk about tackling our energy company now. The questions that one might ask. Can you give me a better deal? Does my energy plan suit my lifestyle and my household usage patterns? What sorts of different rates am I being charged at different times of the day? And as I said, these will vary a little bit from regions and from countries. How do I go about lowering my energy bill? Can I set up regular but lower payments more frequently? Am I eligible for government concessions? Are there extra fees for what I'm doing? Is there an exit fee? And particularly for those persons who've got medical needs or medical equipment, there will be a range of rebates that are available, and there are certain obligations on energy retailers to assist people in those situations. Many of these questions, all of these questions are addressed in the brochures you received in your email, but I'm happy to answer questions. So we'll do that probably towards the conclusion of the session. Right. It would be an interesting thing to know a little bit about how long people have been with their particular energy company. I know many of you will have been with their energy company for a long period of time. I've been with mine for a considerable period of time, but I do take the trouble to keep the pressure on them by ringing them every so often and sort of just cross-checking those questions that I've asked. I'd be interested to see how many of you have been a long time with a provider and whether or not you're actually changing providers to get a better deal. So we'll have a look at the results of that poll in a second or two. Right. You've been with your supplier for very long, Jennifer?
No, not very long at all. I actually changed after we did the speaker training in January.
Ah, very good. That's very good.
I learned an awful lot that day about how your bill is and the sorts of things you can do. So I felt I was much better informed and more confident. Yes.
Yep. Fine. Let's have a look. Yes, it does look like the majority, a significant group of us have been there with an energy company for a long period of time. You're down there very much in the minority, Jennifer. I'm pleased to see that, 50% of people have changed their energy supplier in the last 10 years. So that I think that's encouraging. It's nice to know that people are shopping around and holding the suppliers to account. So some ideas, if we could, on how to shop around. So thank you for participating in that poll. You can compare electricity and gas offers at a website called Energy Made Easy, and the website is there. But again, that will be in your brochures, and there's also a phone number that you can contact those people. For those of you who don't enjoy getting onto the net, there is the New South Wales service that is there. And when switching, one should go to those sites there. The other thing that you can do, and I think is valuable, is to go to the Service New South Wales offices. If you take your bill in there, they will help you to analyse your bill and give you some ideas about where you might go to get a better deal. One caution that I would offer you is the use of some of the commercial comparison sites, and I'm referring. Some of you will be familiar with whatever they're called, Choose I or the Select program. What I do need to let you know about these, and while they're responsible businesses, and will give you an answer. They don't necessarily cover all of the market. Most of these companies operate on the basis of providing a subscription to member organisations. And so the selection of the deal that you're offered may not cover the entirety of their markets. I think that's important to bear in mind. I personally prefer the government websites or Service New South Wales. For those folk who are having difficulty with their payments, the important thing to do, I think, is to call your energy company for help with payments. Don't wait until you're paying late fees or risk being disconnected. At the moment, the energy regulator has limited the capacity of the energy retailers to disconnect folks as a result of the COVID situation. Until March, the statement of expectations that the Australian Energy Regulator has challenged retailers to respond to is to not disconnect folk or to put their bills in the hands of collection agencies, and that moratorium will be in place until next March at this stage. Now, energy companies are, of course, required to help you if you are having difficulty paying, and usually they will offer you an affordable repayment program. Some of these programs enable people to pay a small amount towards their bill each month rather than getting a significant bill on a quarterly basis. When you are speaking to your energy company, let them know that you are having difficulty paying your bills, and ask them what they can do to help. And they are required to have a hardship program, so you need to be aware that option's there. And yes, you should ask for access to that program. Energy companies can't make you, go and see a financial advisor, but you may believe that that's necessary. There are some other payment options which can be helpful. One is for those of you who might receive Centrelink payments. Centrepay will actually address the payment of your electricity bill or your energy bills, and you can arrange for that to be paid directly to the energy company. For some people, this might be a very good way to manage their bills. Various rebates and concessions operate across the country. Various state and territory governments offer a range of concessions. There is for New South Wales holders of pension cards and Commonwealth Seniors Healthcare cards a rebate that is available on application to the My Service offices. And also the other option for people who are experiencing financial difficulty is to have a look at the National Debt Hotline. So there are plenty of options there. So please get help rather than sit in the cold or fall down the stairs in the dark. Okay, I'll pass back to you.
What we're going to talk about now is some things that you can do to change your electricity, the way you use electricity, which may help you to make some savings. So here we've got a little diagram of a house, and it's showing you where the heat comes into an average house. So you'll see that the ceiling can be responsible for up to a third of the heat that comes into the house. Of course, it depends very much where the house is located. If you've got trees around the house which are shading the roof, the amount of heat coming in through the roof may be less, but that's an average one. And you can see it's a very large amount of heat coming through the roof. And this is why in the time of the global financial crisis, more than 10 years ago now, the Commonwealth Government had a plan to help people put insulation in their roofs because they could see this would improve people's living conditions and also save them money. The plan had some adverse publicity because it was rushed into quickly and not thought through, but a lot of people did benefit putting insulation in their homes, including my sister, at that time. So if your roof is not insulated, this is somewhere where you can make real savings. Then the next big gain of heat is through the windows. Now, it depends which side of the house the windows are on, of course. If you've got windows facing south or east, you're going to get less direct sunlight on those windows. But particularly windows facing west are going to get a lot of heat coming in later in the day. And so you really need to think about how you can address and reduce the amount of heat coming through windows, particularly west-facing windows. Think about putting external blinds over those windows. It's usually more effective if the sun doesn't actually hit the glass. But if that's not possible, think about heavy curtains or blinds. You also will get heat through the walls. Same depending on which aspect the wall is facing. The heat will be more or less depending on whether it's a southerly or a northerly aspect. I think we've done a lot, not very much, to think about how to position our houses on a block. There seems to be an assumption. You go along the streets and you'll see houses with garages in the front, and often they're the north-facing windows, the ones that are going to get sun in the winter into the house to keep you warm, and they will not get sun in the summer because the sun's overhead when on the north aspect. But of course, you're stuck with your house. It's been built that way, and if they chose to build it so that you've got lots of windows facing west, you're going to have to cope with that. Then there's air leakage. Peter talked about how badly built our houses are, not really thinking about insulating against outside temperatures, and air leakage can come through if the house has got cracks and either in the actual walls or in the floor. Now, some of the things that you can do to make your house cooler in summer are some of the things that will also make it warmer in winter. And of course, the first thing we've got here is talking about air leaking into the house, and this of course is more of a problem in the winter. You can have air coming in under doors and windows. I remember at one stage in my life I was living in a bluestone terrace house in Melbourne, and it had floor-to-ceiling sash windows, and those sash windows were probably the original ones from 1880 or something, and they rattled around in the frames, and the cold air coming in through those windows in the winter was really quite significant. And I invested in snakes, and it made a big difference. And of course, you can go down to your local hardware and get foam seals to put around your doors and windows to stop drafts. Putting curtains over your windows or blinds is a good way of keeping the heat in winter and the heat out in summer. It's a good idea to have a thermometer, get an idea of what the temperature is inside your house. If you're feeling hot and the thermometer says that it's 28 or 29 degrees, you know that it's right. A lot of people have changed over to LED bulbs, and these use less energy for your lighting. They also last an incredibly long time. Air conditioners have become very common in our houses now, but it's a good idea to use them sparingly, only when you really need to. Sometimes putting a fan on will be enough to keep you cool, and a fan costs about 2 cents an hour to run. So a fan is a much better solution if it's not too hot. Days like Saturday and Sunday, if you've got air conditioning, I think you'd have been going for the air conditioning. But we slept on Saturday night, which was quite hot, with just a fan on in the bedroom. It's and that leads me to another thing. Don't leave the air conditioner or your heater on all night. Usually it's cooler in the evening. You don't need to have the air conditioning on, or you can just have a fan on. And in the winter, you've got your bedclothes to keep you warm. So that will save you a lot of money if you're not leaving the air conditioning on when you're asleep in bed. It's also a good idea to think about the temperature that you can cope with in your house. It's common for people to set air conditioners at quite low temperatures in summer, sometimes 18, 20 degrees. You go into the house and it feels beautifully cool, but after a while you actually start to feel cold. And it's probably better to set it at something like between 24 and 26 degrees. And every time you reduce the temperature on your air conditioner in summer, it is going to cost you more money, up to 10% more for running the air conditioner. So do look at that. There may be arguments in the family if you're living with other people as to what the suitable temperature is, but you might be able to come to a compromised temperature between the two. And the same in winter. Don't have it so hot that you can just walk around in shirt sleeves. Think about wearing warmer clothes and having your heating set at a lower level. A good idea is to not use a clothes dryer, but to dry your clothes on a line outside or on a clothes rack. Now, we talked about insulation before. You can buy insulation rolls for your roof at the hardware store. We're not suggesting that anybody over 50 gets into the roof and installs them themselves, but you would be able to get a handyman on Airtasker or through Horror Hubby, something like that, to come and put it in for you, and you would find that the money that you've saved will make it well worthwhile. Now, we've got a handout that's that you will get at the end, and it's got a lot of these suggestions in it, so you don't need to think about them now, but you can make choices that will reduce. We've already talked about window coverings and using fans. A lot of people these days wash their clothes in cold water. It's been proved to be just as effective as hot water, and of course it's a lot cheaper. We've talked about hanging washing outside on a clothesline or using a rack instead of a dryer. And take shorter showers to save water and save energy. This is the hardest one for me. I love my long hot showers, so I often feel quite guilty. A few other ideas that aren't on the slide here are to install ceiling fans. Also think about using the outdoor barbecue or your microwave when you're cooking in summer, because turning on the stove will heat your kitchen much more than the microwave will. And if you go outside and use the barbecue, you've got no heat in the kitchen at all. What do they say? If you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. So I think we'll go on now and talk about upgrading our appliances, because if we're using an older appliance, it may be using more electricity than a newer one. So we'd like to know, what is the oldest appliance that's in your house? It's quite common for people to hang on to appliances. People our age who grew up with parents who grew up in the Depression have the motto, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, or don't buy a new one. I probably might have the record for today. I have a sewing machine that's 50 years old. It's more than 50 years old. I bought it when I left home and couldn't use my mother's anymore. And the reason why I've still got that sewing machine is, one, it still works. And so why would you get a new one? And the other is because I don't think I can cope with having to use a more complex appliance. And I think this frightens a lot of older people. You're going to get something new and it's going to have electronic controls. I'm going to have to work out how to use it. I might not even know what all the terms are. And so we stick with our old ones. So who has got the oldest? And Pete's got an old appliance too, haven't you, Pete?
Yeah, I had a water pump that serviced a turkey nest dam for many years, and it went for some decades. And while it didn't work, I never replaced. While it continued to work, I never replaced it. So yeah. Of course, you're entitled to love an old sewing machine, and many of us have appliances that have been family heirlooms. And again, that's if you pay a little bit more for that satisfaction, I don't think that's the end of the world either.
Well, I think a sewing machine, I certainly don't use mine very often now, not like I used to. If you're not using it very often, it probably doesn't matter. But it's things that you use a lot, that you use every day or you use every week, that you possibly need to think about upgrading. So how did we go? We had one that was, I'm in the 2%. So the most appliances are between 11 and 15 years old. that's quarter of people. And then we've got probably about 40% of people who've got appliances that are more than 20 years old, more than 15 years old. And we've got some new adopters. About a third of the people here today, their oldest appliance is less than 10 years old. So that's very good. We've got some people who like to keep up to date. So we'll go on. So appliances, as we saw before, use 33% of energy in the house. It's important to look at your appliances and see if, in fact, they are the most efficient. Now, when you go to buy your new appliance, you will find that all appliances these days, washing machines, dishwashers, fridges, have got an energy rating, and it's got the number of stars that it's got. You're probably all familiar with this. Now, the most stars that the appliance has, the more efficient it is. Now, that also means that it's going to cost you less to run. And so it's very important when you're buying something, if you see a price on something and it's a lot cheaper than another appliance on the floor of the shop where you are, think about whether, in fact, you can afford to buy the cheaper appliance, because it isn't just the money that you're going to pay out on the day, it's going to be the operating costs, and that's going to come every time you get a power bill. So looking at the operating costs can save you up to 30% on dishwashers, as you see on the slide here, 25% on washing machines and dryers, and 20% on TVs. So if you're going to buy a dishwasher, and dishwashers get put on an awful lot, maybe go for the one with the most stars. But on the other hand, we've got to still find the money, the initial outlay for the appliance. And some people, although appliances cost a lot less now than they used to, when I think about how much I spent on my first, not on my first washing machine, my second washing machine, which was new because the first one was secondhand. My first new washing machine cost me a lot of money. And nowadays, a washing machine doesn't cost anywhere near as big a proportion of your income as it used to. But most states and territories do have specific programs to assist people to upgrade their old appliances. And so if you go to that website, and once again, we have got this information for you, you will find that there are offers. And in New South Wales, you can get 40% off the cost of a fridge and 50% off the cost of a TV by going to one of these websites to help you invest in some new appliances. So ask somebody who's more familiar with the internet, if you're not yourself, to look it up and see what the current offers are in New South Wales. What I've just told you today may not be the most current one. There is also a no interest loan scheme available throughout Australia for eligible people. And this is offered throughout Australia, and you can find your nearest no interest loan provider by calling that phone number. And these loans are given to people with repayments over 12 to 18 months. And there's no credit checks, there's no fees. And the loans can be anything between $300 and $1,500 for essential items. So that is something that certainly you should explore if you think, and to certainly explore to find out if you're eligible, and if you're eligible, certainly go for it, because it's, and when you get your new fridge or dishwasher, you'll just love it. Another thing that people are tempted to do if they can't afford to buy a new appliance is to rent. And this is not necessarily a good idea. Unless you're only going to be renting for a short period of time, this is going to cost you a lot more money in the long run than buying something in the first place. I remember when colour TVs came out, we found we couldn't afford to purchase a colour TV, and we rented one for a while, and then we realised that was a silly idea. The other thing to avoid is cheap appliances, because they can cost you a lot of money to run. They may look innocent and be cheap to buy, but they'll chew through the power. So a single 2 kilowatt electric heater, if you've got it on for most of the day, could add an enormous amount of money to your bill. I had this experience when I was first married. I think an aunt gave me a 2 kilowatt electric heater, had a little fan in it. It heated things up really fast. It was beautiful. But one day I looked at the meter and the meter was nearly running off the wall because this fan heater was just chewing through the electricity. So things to think about when you're looking to upgrade your appliances. Now we've got.
I remember the single bar radiator that I had as a student, and I think they chew up 1,000 watts. So yeah, kilowatt hour every hour was a fairly expensive option. Not to mention the fire risk. What we do have there is a list of useful contacts for you with the phone numbers. So again, there are some areas where you might get some assistance, and I particularly recommend the comparison sites to you. There is also the Energy Ombudsman, who is happy to take complaints. They've worked with us in preparing for this webinar, and we found them very helpful. If you do have complaints about your service or your bill, they are happy to talk with you, but they usually like you to have spoken to your retailer about your problems before contacting them. So I'll thank you for your attention. That's about what I wanted to say. Do we have some questions, Ross?
We do have one particular question that you may or may not be able to answer, Pete. It seems like it's something that we can direct to you, but Jennifer, feel free to chime in if you know. The question is, can you talk something about meter types, for example, especially digital and smart meters, their advantages and disadvantages?
Yeah, the older style meters actually measured the amount of throughput through the house, which was metered on a 3 monthly or 6 monthly basis. Smart meters, and not everybody has them. They are being rolled out throughout the country. They do give people a notion about the times of use that they're using and the breakup of some of the components of their energy, but the data is limited and is not always supplied back to people. Yeah, there is information available to energy companies from the smart meters, and again, if you are talking to them, it might be useful to ask them what they can tell you about your energy consumption and how you might manage it better.
There are no more open questions at the moment. Megan.
Sorry, Ross. I'll just say in the comments section, there's a question on solar. There seems to be some rebates to cease soon, and I've been considering it, but don't know enough about it or where to get more information. I know Pete can answer some of this about solar. Pete, can I get you to give a bit of info about that?
Look, I've had a set of solar panels, an array of solar panels here for about 5 or 6 years now. I think it's a 1.5 kilowatt system, 4.5 kilowatt system. What one needs to know is that when the sun shines, if you look at those tariff arrangements that I've suggested, when we are exporting energy into the grid, we're usually doing that at a time of day when the lower tariffs exist, and the wholesale price of electricity in the middle of the day is particularly low and generally less than some of the feed-in tariffs, which are used as a market mechanism to attract people. What I would suggest to you is that over time, feed-in tariffs have fallen from the days when government sponsored them. And I would recommend to you or suggest to you that feed-in tariffs are not really the basis on which you should decide whether to invest in a solar panel array. When people, as batteries become more available and the price tends to fall in the same way that the solar panels have done, and you've got control over when you use the energy that you generate and when you release it into the grid, that equation might change. But again, it's a fairly complex situation. I'm just trying to remember the place where you can get advice on solar installations. I just trying to think where I don't have that at hand at the moment, but perhaps we can put that into something on our website to give people some information on where they can go for advice on solar panels.
That'd be terrific, Pete. Look, I'm conscious that I don't think there are any more questions. Oh, sorry, there is one more. There's two questions. Can I get assistance to pay for my meter to be fully checked?
I don't know.
I guess that person must have some queries about the accuracy of the meter. I would suggest that you'd need to go to your provider too.
So,
My view would be that if you are concerned about your meter readings, that you discuss that initially with your retailer, and if you don't get a satisfactory answer, then maybe that might be the time to talk to EWON, the Energy Ombudsman. But yeah, I don't know of any programs that assist in checking of meters at this stage.
But that's
Go on, Jennifer.
I was just going to say that's because energy companies often just give you an average of what they think you've used rather than what you've actually used.
Yeah,
I imagine that's the issue there.
Regular meter readings have gone the way of a lot of things in the modern world.
The same person has made a comment. The company has advised me it'll cost $500. That's for the checking of the meter.
Oh my! Definitely the ombudsman.
Yeah, I wouldn't take that offer on, to be quite honest. It might be better to seek advice elsewhere.
There's another question. Can you explain net metering?
Oh, not simply. It will vary between retailers. It's again, it's to do with the frequency of readings and the it reminds me a little bit of the robo-debt thing. Yeah, sorry, that's not a good explanation. Yeah, I think it's to do with remote estimation of usage.
Look, that's all of the questions that are current. Look, I'm conscious of the time. We try to keep these things to around 60 minutes, and we're just past the 60 minutes. So look, I'd like to thank everybody for being part of the webinar today. I hope you found it informative. Just a reminder that there'll be a quick survey question which pops up in the browser when we finish today. Please let us know if you're going to take any action as a result of what you've learned from the presentation. And remember that the information, almost all of the information that's been provided in the webinar is available in those brochures that you've already had a link to, but Megan says she'll resend the link when at the end of the presentation. She'll resend the brochures, the link to the brochures. The other thing to remember is you will get the whole webinar presentation as a recording on YouTube after the event. So look out for that. There's a lot of comments coming through in the chat room saying how useful you found it. So that's terrific. If you would like to participate in the Community Speakers program in some way by having a speaker for a particular group, or maybe engaging a webinar or something, or you have some suggestions for other topics, please feed them back to COTA New South Wales. And if you're interested in being part of a speaker in the Community Speakers program, please make contact with COTA on that as well, because there will be another training program in early 2021. But thank you very much for being part, and thank you especially to Pete and to Jennifer. They put a lot of work into the presentation today, and I think it's been particularly useful. Anything to say, Jennifer or Pete?
I did a quick search around to cover my thought block, and advice on the solar would be available, I would recommend, from the Clean Energy Council.
All right. Thank you. It's been an honour to be participating today.
Thank you for your attention.
Okay. Thanks everybody for being part.